Thanks for joining me here on Tropical Weather Impact. It is Wednesday, July the 16th here as we track our disturbance in the Gulf. Overnight really did not organize much at all. Reporting here from New Orleans. And you can see there, well, things are still looking a bit ragged overall with organization. We have been watching a lot of showers and thunderstorms develop over the past probably 6 hours or so, but nothing has been able to organize or really maintain itself. You can see some of these colors where they went from white to back to the red color. Those are cloud tops that are starting to warm, which means weekends. One interesting feature that's been developing this morning and this afternoon has been just south of Panama City. That is closer to where we actually have the low level center. Now, what you're looking at here is what was left over of that low level center. It actually moved north up into parts of Georgia and into Alabama. So what's left over is just this residual moisture and some mid-level spin traveling across the northern Gulf. Now, regardless of if this thing actually organizes anymore, this moisture's got to go somewhere, and it is coming through Louisiana as we go through the remainder of your Wednesday night. I think we are going to see some rain build into Southeast Louisiana here, but this is what we're going to be watching to see just how much this thing can organize. Does a new low-level center try to form closer to where we have the showers and storms? Because I tell you what, that low-level center, I don't think it wants to be here, and it doesn't look like it's really moving along with the rest of this. And I'll talk about why here in just a second. We do have some wind shear impacting this system. Now, when we look at some of our high-resolution models, this one is our in-house graph model or IBM model. It's been doing an okay job the past 12 hours or so depicting what's going to happen. So here we go. We have this broad area of showers and storms. Notice it is mostly dry over in Louisiana right now. But if you look north up here where the old low level center is, it's really no longer a factor in this. Now, as we go throughout today, you can see some of that rain starts to move inland. It's not organized though. It's just tropical rain. And so it's a reminder this doesn't have to be a named storm for us to get something that could cause some heavy rain. Now, luckily, and at least I'm optimistic that maybe that doesn't last too long. And so our flood risk hopefully is mitigated by the fact that, yeah, while it's heavy, hopefully it doesn't last all night. Now, fast forward into tomorrow morning. Here we are waking up Thursday. You can see there we start to see a little bit more consolidation of that low level center, or at least some rotation, and this is when I think we have our best shot of getting a tropical depression. Now, the Hurricane Center, they're still not sold on this. It doesn't have a whole lot of time, and so they're saying about a 40% chance that this does become a depression. And you can see as we go throughout our Thursday, that's when we'll have our best shot if it is actually over the warm waters here of the northern Gulf. Now, this is also something to notice. Notice the structure of this developing low. Where's the rain? It's all on the southwest side of it. Now, this is thanks to shear. The shear I'm going to talk about in a second, but on the eastern side of this system, it may end up being on the drier side. Now, if this low pressure is more centered over New Orleans, we may see some of that heavier rain move inland, but if it's along the coast here, there's a good chance that that heaviest of the rain stays near the coast and then flings up towards central and western Louisiana. So as we put this in motion, notice here we are Friday morning. This somewhat weak, low pressure, maybe a depression, moving into Louisiana. Where is all the moisture? It is still on the southern side of that circulation, whereas we just have scattered showers passing through southeast Louisiana. So I want to set expectations here that the way it's looking right now, and thanks to how this shear and some dry air is working, is we may end up seeing the bigger rain totals right here along the coast or out in the Gulf. The further north you get inland, yeah, we're on the east side of the storm. You typically associate that with the wetter side of the storm. Not really the case in this type of setup. Yes, we have passing showers, but I think there are going to be dry hours mixing in, and at times there may be many dry hours as we go throughout your Thursday and Friday. Nonetheless, these are tropical showers. This is heavy rain. If it falls too quickly, too fast, it doesn't move too fast, you do get that threat for street flooding. And so that's what we're going to be on the watch for here. Again, this is not a major hurricane. This is not a storm we're evacuating for. And I do think there are going to be plenty of dry hours mixing in. So those rain totals, it's going to be a really interesting and close call. And so I don't want us to let our guard down here anywhere across South Louisiana. But if that low pressure decides to form a little further south off the coast and the heavy rain stays on the southern side, you've got some impressive rain totals. That little black area there is over 10 inches. But if that stays over the water, then, well, it doesn't really matter. Now, if that low is a little bit closer, gets pulled up a little faster maybe, we could see some of those higher rain totals try to creep into southeast Louisiana Thursday and especially into Friday. And so that's why we're still on guard here, but I'm cautiously optimistic that we will have widespread 2 to 4 inches here inland. maybe 6 to 10 in isolated areas. And it shows you there is a potential for 10 plus inches of rain somewhere in the vicinity of this low pressure. And it doesn't matter what model you look at, a lot of them are showing a similar thing. The European model, and this is rainfall over the next 7 days, so it's not even going anything too wild. 1, 2, 3 inches. The GFS is showing a similar setup here where you could see the coastal areas have a higher chance of seeing those bigger rain totals. And so that's why I'm optimistic on this Wednesday that maybe we missed the worst of the rain. So let's talk about why this storm is doing what it's doing, why it's struggled so far, and what may keep that rain on the southern edge of the storm. It's important to know what's going on not only at all levels of the atmosphere. And so what we're looking at here, we're looking at these wind barbs. These winds things you see here are 30 to 40,000 feet up where the jet stream is. The red you see here is a lot closer to the ground, and that's a lower level ridge. And so what you're seeing here is that what's controlling the actual low level center of this thing trying to form is what's happening in red. And so that's a lot weaker. The ridge is stronger out here to the west, and why it's not been able to organize much so far is because that low-level center has been traveling around the ridge, which is weaker in the lower level. So it's getting pulled this direction. So the low-level center is trying to go this way. Well, those thunderstorms that are developing into the sky, which are going 20, 30,000 feet up into the atmosphere, they're being blown off by the upper level winds here. So you've got the low level winds going this way, you've got the upper level winds going this way, and that's why it's taking all those thunderstorms and taking them away from that low level center. Now that trend overall is probably going to continue, because when you go out in motion here, let's say we go out till Thursday here, you can see that the ridge gets a little bit stronger, but if a low pressure at the surface is trying to form, it's still getting pulled towards Louisiana, whereas the upper level winds are still doing what? They're pushing out of the east, so they're keeping all that rain around that low pressure on the southern and western side of it. So if you've got a low here, you've got all the rain on this side of the storm, and that's why we have the potential to get less rain here in New Orleans and the surrounding areas, because it would push that moisture. Now again, if that moisture decides to come in a little faster, well then you get the moisture, or the low coming in here, you get the moisture push a little bit further inland here to New Orleans. So that's a very fine detail, but that's why the structure of this low pressure is interesting and not typically what we would see. Oftentimes, your wind shear is coming out of the other direction, and so it's blowing the storms on the east side of the storm. And so that's why this setup has looked interesting so far. When it was moving into Florida, the low-level center was going northwest, and the mid-level center was going with the upper-level winds this way. And so that's why it's looked a little funky here overall. Now, while those upper-level winds are not strong right now, I mean, you're only talking these upper level winds blowing the storms are not blowing terribly strong, because this is a ridge of high pressure too. It's directional shear, and so you get different directions, and that is considered wind shear when you're talking about a tropical system. So that's why right now we're not seeing any significant or rapid development of this system. Now, if it does start to come together, we would probably happen sometime on Thursday. We could start to see a little bit stronger winds. I don't think winds are going to be ever substantial with this, but if you live along the coast, you could start to see some wind gusts 30 to 40 miles an hour. As any showers blow inland, they can also produce wind gusts 30 miles an hour or so. So we're not talking about anything damaging here, but every now and then you have some strong wind gusts. I would not necessarily be out on the water here Thursday or Friday, and you can see there by Thursday afternoon, if we start to see that low pressure form near the coast, you do start to see some of these blues. Those are winds in the 20 to 30 mile per hour range. The pinks show winds gusting 40, 45 miles an hour, and those are not widespread. So we may see some stronger wind gusts at times, but it's nothing substantial. And while they may be up to around tropical depression status, remember, you got to have more than just the winds for it to meet and to be called a depression. The structure of the system actually has to meet the definition. Here we are Friday. Notice we still have a fresh breeze coming in off the Gulf here, coming off the lake here, so we do expect the lake to be a bit choppier. If you live on the North Shore Friday, you'll probably have some waves crashing up there. If you live along the coast, your water is going to start to collect some. And remember, it doesn't take much for water to start to pile up on our coastline. We do expect probably 1 to 2 feet higher than normal here if we do have a depression forming. Those winds will be slightly stronger and the water will be slightly higher, mainly during the daytime. That's during high tide. So overall, the tropical impacts from this system, I do think it's going to be fairly minimal. The main thing to watch out for are street flooding. And I say minimal, I'm talking about widespread coverage of impacts. Now, that's not to say we may see one of these little tropical showers move over one area and drop 2 to 4 inches of rain in an hour. That's going to cause street flooding. And if that happens in the city of New Orleans, you're thinking, wow, this storm was bad, but a lot of places are just not going to see that. And so I think the way it's trending now, that flooding will be somewhat isolated, but it's still a possibility. Coastal flooding, you know, that's a minor thing we deal with often down here with the persistent winds. So that's a possibility, gusty winds and tornadoes. If we actually have a depression forming and we're on the eastern side, you can still get the right winds to cause some rotation in the atmosphere. And so there's a low risk for that. But overall, expectations for this to be a major event are not there. So our flood risk, the main thing we're watching for today, I think that flood risk is going to be rather isolated. Higher chance of rain moving into Louisiana as we head into this evening. Your Thursday flood risk is slightly higher, although I am thinking a lot of the heavier rain near the coast and out in the Gulf, we've got some of that shear pushing the rain away from the inland spots, so we may not see a lot of rain on Thursday. It's going to be a close call, so we're going to have to monitor it. Now Friday, as that depression or whatever it is, low pressure moves inland, notice we have a higher risk for flooding, especially from the Bayou, the Atchafalaya Basin, Lafayette, and Lake Charles. This corridor here, closer to where the center probably moves inland, has a better shot. That's if the center of that low pressure moves in out this way. On the flip side, where it's all about scenarios and forecasting, if that low tries to creep in a little faster and that moisture pulls in faster, we could have a higher risk for flooding closer to New Orleans, but I wouldn't say that is a guarantee at this point. And then fast forwarding into Saturday, we finally start to lose that risk for flooding, and I still have a chance of rain Saturday. I don't think it's completely dry, but we start to see the remnants of whatever this is move on out. And then a big ridge of high pressure, that one we were just tracking, it's going to get a lot stronger, which means next week is going to get hotter and drier. So this is a 7-day forecast for the New Orleans area and Southeast Louisiana. Chances of rain are elevated through Friday. Saturday, still a chance, but notice the trend here. Less rain, hotter temperatures. We're really going to start to feel like July by the end of the week. So that's the latest on Invest 93 as it continues to very slowly, and it's struggling out there. It's not organizing very fast. There's still an off chance we get a depression, but watching for that moisture at the end of the day. We're going to have updates for you constantly here on WWL Plus and on all of our platforms. You'll be able to stream us as we continue to track this moisture over the next few days. I want to thank you so much for joining me.